Okay, another instance of potential triumph or potential disaster. More testing at 4K. If you're not seeing the show in 4K, you want to head over to YouTube. Not all the platforms support 4K, but YouTube, the Jason Goodman channel, the recently, not that recent anymore, back in April, recently restored Jason Goodman YouTube channel is at 4K. And we continue to test some of these systems. There we go. Now, some people told me that they found this a little bit dizzy making. I'll try to make sure I hold the camera as stable as possible, but most people seem to feel that it was a positive development that we've got this 360 view now where you can see everything that I see and me in the inset. But we've got a lot to discuss today. A lot of people saw yesterday Zohran Mamdani had a press conference. He's on a little bit of a press tour, actually, talking about his city-run grocery stores. And it's interesting to see the things that catch people's attention in these various headlines. Everybody was hung up on the fact, and they were playing this video again and again, that somebody asked him how they're gonna keep it to people from New York to get these groceries at 30% off. And they said, first of all, he handed it off. Catch people's attention. Yeah, I think we're live here, so that's good. We're gonna monitor this. Somebody asked him, I love the shoes. That is a fashionable and well-coiffed hound. But a journalist said, hey, Mamdani, how are you going to make sure that only people from New York get these groceries? And he was like, talk to this midget lady. And she said, well, our request for a proposal is going to, what did she say? She said that they have a proposal out to prevent that. They're going to use some kind of library card style system. And first of all, just because you have a proposal that says we're going to prevent fraud, I mean, how stupid are they? This is New York City. You can't walk half a foot without smacking right into some fraud. We'll talk about what I anticipate will happen there, but let's just focus for another moment on what they were saying at the press conference. So that woman who's part of Mamdani's little, whatever he's got going on there, is it his cabinet, his advisors, all these people that he's paying way too much. She said they're going to use library cards. People interpreted that to mean, oh, you're going to need ID to buy groceries, but you don't need ID to vote. So then Mamdani went on Joy Reid, I think it was, a podcast, and he said, no, you're not going to need ID to get that library card. So he's basically saying that if you go get whatever credential is required, like in other words, food stamps, I don't think stamps exist any longer. It's an EBT card. You see all these things that say we accept EBT, and it's like essentially a credit card. Now, that's not ID. I don't know how you get these EBT cards, but you can't, if you get pulled over by the cops or something, you can't show them an EBT card. It's not, you can't get on a plane with it. It's just for buying, groceries and beer and soda and whatever they sell you with that. So it's probably going to be something like that. And then, so there's no controls on how people are going to be able to get that. And my question becomes, yes, thank you, Matt. This is the new 4K. I'm trying to make it look amazing. We'll talk more about the tech in a moment, but let's just stay focused on the chaos mayor, the absolute joker, Zohran Mamdani. Because this is a joke. First of all, they're not going to be able to control who gets it. That means any person at all could enter New York illegally. They haven't expressly stated that there's going to be any safeguard, any need for ID. They're saying there will not be. Mamdani told Joy Reid, no, don't worry, you're not going to need ID. to get this library card to get into the 30% off supermarket, you're basically putting out a bullhorn to fraudsters to start. I'm sure people are already researching how to get that credential to get into these New York City stores. But let's set that aside for a moment. He said the goal, here's a Lucid, somebody wasted a lot of money on a car that's going to go out of business. That's like $200,000. I think they lose $200,000 per car that they're making, subsidized by the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund. Subsidizing, it's exactly what we're talking about. So he's telling you outright, there's no stated control mechanism on stopping absolutely anybody without ID from getting this library card to get into the supermarket, the Joker supermarket. And he said that the goal is to have 5 of these, 1 in each borough. Now, if you're not from New York, maybe that bounced off of your head and didn't register, but the 5 boroughs of New York City are Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and the Bronx. We're in Manhattan here. I'm trying to think. Yeah, the show has gone to each of the 5 boroughs throughout the 10 years that Crowdsource the Truth has existed. And by the way, thanks to all the folks who have supported Crowdsource the Truth over the years. You can do that on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. People can also do it by following me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribing there. And please, if you're enjoying the 4K, consider becoming a subscriber. This is costing a lot more now because I'm burning data like a maniac. This is 4 times as much data, and right now we are operating at 12 megabits per second. So not only is it 4K, but there's a very high bit rate, and we'll talk about that some more. I know people are very concerned with bit rates, equally as concerned as with the supermarket. So the 5 boroughs of New York City, that's like, him saying we're gonna have 1 supermarket in each of the boroughs. That's like me saying I'm going to urinate in each of the world's oceans and hope that that raises the pH level. This is all just communist posturing. I mean, my point is, maybe that'll scare away a couple of fish in the immediate vicinity of the urine, but it's not going to do anything to substantially address this issue that he alleges it's intended to address. Fire department, which is to help people put groceries on the table. 1 supermarket per borough? I mean, do you know how many supermarkets there are in New York City if we want to count bodegas, convenience stores, all that kind of thing? This plan is just absolutely stupid. And I mean, to further that analogy, scaring away fish, maybe you'll close down, small markets near where these other supermarkets, where these city supermarkets are opening. Maybe it'll affect bodegas and things like that. But what I would really anticipate is we're going to see opportunistic fraudsters like these people who I saw driving these Toyota Sienna vans. I don't remember if this was on a live stream or just something I saw on my own, but I saw some guy, maybe Tren de Aragua adjacent, driving a New Jersey license plate Toyota Sienna van. And he was driving around loading out these women who had the Igloo coolers filled with sandwiches, illegal food vendors selling to the construction workers and stuff. There's less of this now, but at the height of the unfettered open border migrant invasion, every street corner somebody was selling these illegal sandwiches. So my point is, those same style of, like-minded opportunistic fraudsters, they're going to line up to receive these credentials to get into these 30% off stores and buy every chicken, every box of eggs, every carton of milk, that you can get for 30% off, and they're going to use that stuff.
So I thought I would.
You can tell who's not from New York. They're going to use that stuff to basically create a black market of opportunistic fraudsters.
Why would anyone?
Who are going to be riding on the taxpayer's dime. And by the way, when you sell those illegal sandwiches, people are like, oh, they're just trying to make a living. You know what? We all are. But why do I want you got to pay tons of tax money, and they're going to raise the taxes, and then we want to give it out to people who are not creating other jobs and businesses. They're selling illegal sandwiches for cash to not pay taxes. It's a little bit outrageous if you want to ask me. So, at best, this Zohran Mamdani plan, which, by the way, there were tons of morons in the comments, like, oh, that last video I did, we were talking mostly about lawfare and testing of this signal, which, by the way, the signal is looking quite good. We're maintaining 12 megabits. Seems like for most of this walk, I've got a little monitor here now, and I'll talk about how I was able to achieve that boost. Oh, wow, look at that.
Hi, Jigs.
See that burst of aerosolized? What is that? Now let's stop here for a moment because we have this new capability. Here, we'll stop over here where we can evaluate that aerosolized stuff. We can zoom in. Just a cloud, really. I don't know if people saw earlier, but I had a photo that I put on X of I don't know what it was, maybe a C-17 or a C-117, some cargo plane with fighter jets. I put it on X. Check it out, at JG_CSTT. I put it on X and I put the comment, what the hell is that? Not that, that's maybe a GT350. I put the comment, what the hell is that, in terms of the fighter jet escorts to this military transport. And then I posed my own question to Grok, because I wanted to know, are these F-35s or F-16s or whatever? And it said, oh, this is a post from at JG_CSTT, Jason Goodman of Crowdsource the Truth, questioning a military transport aircraft being escorted by, it said F-16s. Maybe it's right. But it said, this is typical of Jason Goodman's posts where he's questioning. So they said that this flyover was planned and announced yesterday. I don't know where that announcement was made, but for people who didn't hear about it, it was announced. David Hawkins would say, they make those announcements, and that's the kind of dual use thing where they announce, like, what was that exercise that they announced with the Miller Lite and Osama bin Laden's face? I forget the name of it. We should go back to that. He used to bring it up all the time. That repetition was important, Shakespearean almost, and now I forgot. But it's during these types of planned, coordinated drills that other things happen. But yeah, we've got a really beautiful high bitrate 4K view of the High Line. I don't know, maybe people haven't been able to enjoy the High Line in this kind of high resolution, high bitrate mode. And it seems like I've got the auto exposure under control. This is new software that was designed to work in tandem with this other thing that I'm about to tell people about that I've been using for a while, but I realized yesterday wasn't working properly. Everybody knows that I've spent a number of years walking around. See, that girl looked quite skeptical, and she turned around and looked at what I was doing. But ponytail sticking out of the hoodie. All these, look at all this is like an information overload bombarding the senses. But I started doing these walk-arounds really, I guess, during the pandemic. The truth of the matter is the very first mobile Crowdsource the Truth broadcast, I believe, was with John Mark Dugan. No, might have been a test with Quinn Michaels in Philadelphia. I can't quite remember which was first, one of those two. But that's the way this sort of stuff comes about. First you're testing, then it gets perfected, then it becomes commonplace. But this idea of getting out of the podcast studio, the apartment, whatever it might be, and going around and seeing things outside without losing the benefit of being live. Lots of fire department people around today. People aren't thankful enough to the fire department. Those guys, we lost a lot of firefighters on September 11th. Yeah, PJK has this on the big TV, right. A lot of people get these 4K TVs, and then there's still not that much 4K stuff you can watch. So now you can watch Crowdsource the Truth in 4K. Just the walks. I don't yet have this all integrated back at the apartment yet, but if this works well, we can easily do that. If you're enjoying Crowdsource the Truth in 4K, become a sponsor on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or on Substack. Your choice, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. You get 4K on all of those. I don't think you can yet do 4K on X. I'm pretty sure that only does HD. So think about that. You're very cutting edge if you're watching 4K. And right, as I mentioned, a good place to see it is on the Jason Goodman channel on YouTube. That's recently reinstated in April of 2026 after more than a 5-year legal battle with YouTube. It was primarily George's brother who orchestrated the removal of that channel. And some people say, please, who is George? George, of course, is a drunk loser. I don't even want to necessarily mention his name to promote him. If you don't know who he is, you're in better shape. But he is a guy who I started doing videos with 9 and some odd years ago. A little over 9 years ago. Right around this time, June or May of 2017. Yeah, let's talk about this. This is worth discussing. Because, see, I started this, Crowdsource the Truth that is, after my Hollywood production company, 21st Century 3D, which was a visual effects stereoscopic cinematography company specialized in 3D cinematography and visual effects. That became very successful for a short while when 3D was popular, but around 2013, 14, the bottom dropped out. People who have been watching for years know this. All of this is well documented. I've been interviewed, an American cinematographer. I've spoken at the Cannes Film Festival, the British Film Institute, the Directors Guild of America. There was an early effort to try to say, oh, yeah, Jason's making this all up. This is his backstory. He's a CIA, FBI, Mossad agent, and this is all fake and made up. That's false. Everything I'm saying is documented, easily checked. I don't rely on stupid falsehoods. That's what those other people do. I think this is closed all the way down here, which is disappointing because it gives us an opportunity to kind of go wide and walk around. But actually, this is good. We test the network out here. Still up at 11 to 12 megabits per second, which is excellent. Using a bonded link aggregating technique that I've been trying to use for some time. But it wasn't until a conversation I had yesterday with a wireless networking expert. This guy was really smart. Told me a lot of very useful things. And today, for the first time, I'm employing some of that guy's... What the hell was that?
But it's like...
maybe just a car backfiring. That guy's strategies, yeah, it sounds like just a car. And I don't want to talk about what those are, because again, everything I say, the losers that I'm explaining to people, George, his brother, there really seems to be a network around those guys, but they just fixate on anything and everything that I do and attempt to disrupt it. So I don't want to give them too many details, but you know, if the signal holds all the way out here, that's a pretty good sign. So this live stream is something of a test, something of a rant. What is this? Do people see that? I don't know. We got this is actually, I believe, subsidized, you know, low-income housing being constructed over here. For people who perhaps don't know, where we are right now is Hudson Yards. So this whole thing, yeah, you can see it right there. It seems like a new, relatively new mural. Hudson Yards. That is this whole kind of complex neighborhood, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, this whole thing is as large, really, as the downtown of certain cities would be. This just popped up. This area over here, they call it Hudson Yards because it's the train yard, but previously this patch of land was a big, giant FedEx dispatch, like just trucks parked in a giant parking lot on top of a flat building that was itself a FedEx, I don't know, I guess, you know, shipping hub or something. And you could actually go there. It was crazy. It was like that scene in Trading Places where they're on the floor of the stock exchange. You go in that FedEx at 9:27 and people are like rushing to get your packages out because every other FedEx in New York closes at 9 p.m. That place, I was in there with many a hard drive at 9:29 p.m. and you get your package in and they drive it to Newark and take it away. But anyway, yeah, today I think is the first time I've got the networks correctly bonded. So that could be the difference between losing signal and not. I don't want to put the kibosh on anything, but I think people know. A lot of people are like, where are the walks? Where are the walks? I don't think people would believe the amount of work I've been trying to do to make sure that these live streams stay live. Nothing was more frustrating to me than the loss of a live stream midstream. Again, I don't want to kibosh it. Oh yeah, look, here's cameras. Now I don't think, are these flock? The flock camera has a particular look that I don't think that is. But what the flock? It's a camera. So it's looking at me, I'm looking at it. Also very David Hawkins-esque. So people say, who is George? George is a drunk loser who I saw on YouTube. And not to fixate on these guys, but they've been very fixated on me for 9 years. And there's something important to discuss about it today. But before I do, I want to give people a little background because sometimes I don't want to talk about it because there are other more important things to talk about. Sometimes I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to reveal information that could be potentially weaponized against me. You know, George's brother has been suing me for the past 9 years, repeatedly, again and again and again. And he is a twisted individual who, by his own description, as I understood it, is mentally ill. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, yeah, that's why. He's a mentally ill guy. He doesn't like your YouTube channel. Can't find a pickleball league to join to occupy his time. Can't take care of his own troubled son who really needs a lot of attention. So he's got to focus on me. It does not make sense to me, even from the standpoint of him being a mentally ill lunatic, allegedly. It seems more like he's been motivated to do that. And you might say, oh, well, you know, Jason, everybody says that. Yes, it's true. But let's just go back in time a bit. Brendan Murphy, Love Matters. Doesn't that look great? 4K, everybody. Give me a thumbs up in the comments if you're digging the 4K. But so, 9 years ago, I met George, and by the way, all of this represents like the most refined version of this vision that I had a long time ago. You know, as I said, I was running 21st Century 3D. You've got Spider-Man out now. He's making $1 billion. Second fastest to $1 billion ever. Largest opening weekend ever. Impressive work from Spider-Man. I worked on the 2010. We were shooting it in 2010. Maybe it was released in 2011. But the Andrew Garfield one, I worked on that. And that was 21st Century 3D. So after 2013, when 3D work really pretty much dried up, 2014, 15, I was trying to come up with different ideas, got divorced, and I was becoming very disillusioned with various aspects of what was going on in our country. And, you know, I've been aware for a long time of some of these FBI scandals and, you know, weird controversies, whether it's 9/11, the JFK assassination. Now we have even more. Charlie Kirk assassination, still rocking 12 megabits. Thank you, mobile data network guy. That's awesome. And I decided to start doing a YouTube channel, right? And pretty early on, I saw this guy, George Webb, also talking about government conspiracies, FBI cover-ups. He was talking specifically about a guy named Imran Awan. And I began following him. And one day, he puts out a video where he says, hey, does anybody know Lee Stranahan? And if you haven't heard, I also put this on X. In April, my old friend Lee Stranahan, our friend Lee Stranahan, he died. Lee had a really rough last couple of years of his life. He had maybe 5 or more strokes shortly after having the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And, you know, correlation is not causation, whatever people want to say. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what caused it. I'm just mentioning that. But he did. He had many, many strokes. And Lee is not with us anymore. But in 2017, George puts out this video saying, hey, I'm going to Washington, D.C. Anybody know Lee Stranahan? And I have since come to believe that George is connected to a network that is somehow connected to or working in the interest of the FBI. And I don't mean that George has an FBI badge or punches a clock in Langley or receives a check with a DOJ logo on it. I mean, I think he is employed somehow through an FBI cutout, very probably the Lawfare Institute or something related to the Lawfare Institute. And the reason I say that will become clear as this broadcast continues and hopefully remains continuous. If you're enjoying it, please become a sponsor on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. And don't forget to follow on X at JG_CSTT. So George, he said, anybody know Lee Stranahan? And the truth is, you could have pretty easily figured out that I knew Lee just by looking at comments on George's video saying, oh, who's this guy, Jason Goodman? My channel was Jason Goodman at the time. I'm very open about my identity. I'm not trying to hide anything from anybody. I don't have any criminal past or any kind of crazy thing I'm trying to cover up. Now, do we want to go all the way over here? It's going to be super sunny. Let's stay. It would be good to test the network, but we'll stay over here. Then you could have gone to my social media. You could have easily looked on Facebook, say, hey, who does this guy know? Ah, Lee Stranahan. So in other words, if you wanted to rope me into something, how do you develop a patsy is what I'm getting at. How do you make someone do something and cause them to believe it was their idea or their initiative when in fact it's you? We hear, or I've heard, I don't know if you have, but we've heard of this technique called nudging, which is where intelligence agencies and intelligence operatives, they direct a target to do something that's their idea. Whether it's kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, climb up to the roof at the Locy Center, call in a bomb hoax to the Port of Charleston, Wando Welch Terminal, I think is the name of that. You know, how do they get targets to do these things? I really do like that artwork there. And to be clear, I don't have proof that this is what was done. I'm looking at evidence and forming an opinion. A court would call it perhaps conclusory. I've learned a lot about court from these jackasses. Oh yeah, the other thing my network buddy told me is that glass and concrete are the biggest enemies of radio waves. So even just walking one block, oh, is this a Raptor R? It is. Oh, does he have a ticket? No. You know how you can tell it's a Raptor R is this incredible supercharger on the hood. I think it's 800 and something horsepower. And also usually the last R is painted red, but people do whatever they want with the decals. What did Hunter Biden do with his Raptor? We don't know. Probably crashed it. So the nudge, right? So that got me to send George Lee Stranahan's phone number. Now I'm in touch with George. And see these people riding these things on the sidewalk. And then I called George and said, hey, let's do an interview. I'm trying to start a YouTube channel. Now at that time, I don't even think I had the ability to go live at all on YouTube. I was just making videos and uploading them to YouTube. YouTube didn't have live streaming, I don't think, until 2014. And there were initially a lot of restrictions on it. Because keep in mind, YouTube is giving you all this capability totally for free. And not to defend YouTube, but it takes really a lot of infrastructure and money to make it work. So the fact that it would take a while to get it online for loads and loads of people, it makes sense to me. Look at this, we're walking all over and staying at 11 megabits. I think people should still have a continuous connection without buffering. So today could be a breakthrough broadcast. I hope so. So I was just making videos, and the idea that I had at that time was the 5-camera shoot in a gym bag, right? What had happened was the insurance had come due on all my super expensive camera equipment, and I was so flat out, I just couldn't even afford to re-up the insurance. And then I was nervous about having all this expensive camera equipment around. If there was a flood in my building or if somebody stole it, I would be out. Tons of dope. So I just said, look, this is it. No more 3D happening. I gotta sell all this stuff. And I was living off of that money, selling the camera equipment for quite a while. It was a lot of expensive camera equipment. But it coincided with the realization, I think the iPhone 6S had just come out. And if you look back through the history of phones, I don't know if that was the first one to do HD, but they had a sensor breakthrough on that phone that really made it look a lot better, broadcast kind of quality HD. And it was a breakthrough at the time, 10 years ago. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm gonna step away from 3D and I'm just gonna do interviews. And, you know, I didn't really know anything about journalism or have necessarily very much confidence in myself in terms of being a journalist. So I just figured I'll interview people. That guy had a flat. And I'll ask them questions and things, and we'll crowdsource the truth. We'll see who knows the truth. And so George, I think, was the first interview with that 5-camera shoot in the gym bag idea. And it was very well received, that video. People liked it. It's worth going back and looking at. You can see it on the original Jason Goodman YouTube channel, which is back as of April, thanks to lots of legal work by me. And not Larry Klayman. Very disappointed that he was unable to do that. But, so I said, hey George, everybody loved that video. And, you know, I don't really know anything about journalism, but you seem to. However, your videos are just like you shaking around a cell phone, pointing at a laptop. They kind of suck. Why don't we, you know, sort of join forces, and you can be the journalist, and I'll be your video producer or whatever, and let's team up. And he said, sure. We started doing that. And one of the first things he did was try to jam me up with this nonsense in the port of Charleston. People can go back and watch that too. He told me to name a video Clear and Present Danger, a calm before the storm. And then Trump said that, and that became associated with QAnon. We did that video before QAnon ever came out. So they tried on Vice TV to make this association that because I named the video that, you know, they had their whole series on who is QAnon, and they tried to say that it was me or that I had something to do with creating it, which I assure you I did not. And the second I heard about it, said this is nonsense. You know, you had Tracy Diaz talking about it, who's been closely associated with General Flynn and what's his name, Patrick Byrne. So I was saying from the jump that that was absolute nonsense, and George was trying to plant things that didn't mean anything to me at the time, but could be used against me later. Similar kind of tactic to this nudge, right? If you know a plan, if you've read the script and something happens in the beginning of the movie that doesn't pay off until the end, you get where I'm going. So anyway, they tried to jam me up in the port of Charleston, and that didn't work. And that's really where a lot of George's brother's legal action around me was centered, you know. First it was Robert David Steele, and George's brother, he intervened. He tried to intervene in that case in Eastern District of Virginia. Then he brought a lawsuit against me in South Carolina, Port of Charleston, mentioning all that stuff. And first they were upset. They were saying that I did something to get George put in jail. I bailed George out of jail. So, I mean, nothing he's ever said or done in this context has made any sense. But that's fine. You know, his purpose, as far as I can tell, is to just keep me in court. So another one of the very early things that George did was he said, hey, we should interview this guy, Charles Ortel. Now, I think Charles going on, I was down there doing a live stream. Witty's walked out to go to lunch, and he was standing right in front of me on the sidewalk. I recognized him right away, and I started peppering him with questions. That's called journalism, not stalking. But it's interesting that Nina Jankowicz tried to do that. She's also very closely tied to this, very closely tied to Benjamin Witty's and therefore the Lawfare Institute. And I think that George and his brother are essentially attack dogs, hitmen, lawfare hitmen for the Lawfare Institute. And think about it, if you ran a nonprofit organization that received multiple millions of dollars, some of the money got sent directly to your home address, we don't really know what that money is being used for. We know approximately 300,000 of it was paid to Alexander Vindman shortly after he testified against Trump. So that is interesting because I was discussing this with Charles. You know, when I worked on that Spider-Man movie, 2010, I had been trying to get representation in Hollywood. And I mean, I was pretty green, right? I figured, oh, you get an agent gets you lots of gigs, you get money. And the agent takes, I don't even remember, 10, 15%, some exorbitant sum. And I could not get an agent because I was what's called below the line. If you're not an actor or a director, you know, a famous person, it can be difficult to get representation. Here's more pickleball. And you know, when you're a stereographer or a cinematographer, most of those kind of people don't really get representation. But when I got on Spider-Man, I did. Got an agent. And the only reason we're talking about this is, you know, when we hear that 300,000 gets paid to Vindman, that has to be recorded in the public filings of a 990. But we don't really know what deal Vindman has. Maybe, and again, I don't have any evidence of this. I'm speculating right now. I'm looking at a particular set of transactions, and this is conjecture as to how something might work. Perhaps a backroom deal is made where someone like, but not exactly Benjamin Wittes, says to someone else like Alexander Vindman, but maybe not even necessarily him, hey Vindman, we're gonna pay you 300,000, but you keep 100, and then pay 100 to this idiot over here, perhaps somebody like George's brother, pay another 100,000 to this idiot over here, perhaps pick your other favorite social engineer. Again, I'm just describing the way money can flow around in these networks, because George's brother becomes very exercised when I expose true facts about people, precisely Nina Jankowicz. It doesn't seem like someone he should care about unless what I'm saying is correct and true. Then it would make a lot of sense. Still rocking 12 megabits. I love it. Here's the high bit rate. Oh, see, now the problem is I hope my data plan doesn't run out. So yeah, definitely become a sponsor. Oh, it's buffering. Was it buffering? It's automatic selector. Anybody else have buffering? Yeah, you're gonna need a high speed. If you're watching at 4K, you need a sufficient internet connection to watch at 12 megabits per second. This is 4 times the bit rate of what the show is normally broadcast at, but you can turn it down on that little gear icon on YouTube if your internet can't hack it. So anyway, the point is, I believe George and his brother are, you know, attack dogs working for this Lawfare Institute and a network of people and organizations around that. And then it causes me to wonder, how big is that network? You know, who is associated with their own networks that are associated with that network? Because you remember we saw Blake Bednar's communicating with George. You know, how do these things interact? I know I'm not part of it. They're trying to shut me down. And I'm not saying that that means that everybody else is, but, you know, I see these weird connections, like Cullen, you know, turning to the dark side. Cullen just produced a video recently that I saw where he's got some video he ripped from Instagram or TikTok of somebody, and a dot flies by and he says that's a drone. How far the mighty have fallen. John Cullen, who previously did such excellent work on things like the Vegas shooting, I mean, he's got absolutely no evidence that the things that he's pointing to are anything other than insects very close to the camera lens. One of the things that we learned from analyzing all those videos on the Charlie Kirk assassination is that certainly now, and I might not have known this when the Trump assassination occurred, because the last big event that we were looking at like that was 2017, the Vegas shooting. Maybe a lot of people had phones that were just barely making it to HD, right? A lot of people might have had older cell phones in 2017. But now, everybody's got HD and even 4K. There were some people with Samsung 8K phones at the Charlie Kirk assassination. Now, I don't think a lot of people were recording at 8K, and I haven't really reviewed those Samsung phones to understand if the sensors are actually 8K or if the image is interpolated to 8K. But my point is, we've got a lot more detail in phones than even I realized. You know, we analyzed some videos on the Butler assassination where I thought we might have seen drones, but in retrospect, really, my drone evidence on the Butler assassination, I didn't start talking about drones until I got that unredacted police report that had the phone number for Rafael Eduardo Castro, who was the... Oh, you did have a little of buffering. All right. Did it bring up that message that said, reconnecting, please stand by? There's a lot of reasons why it could buffer, but as long as we don't disconnect, that's the real big... You know, we are shoving a lot of data down the pipe here, 12 megabits a second. But my point is, my primary drone evidence, I don't even want to say drone evidence. The whole reason the drone question came up in Butler was we got Rafael Eduardo Castro's phone number on a police list that said he was a counter UAS operator. And UAS is unmanned aerial system. So what is a counter UAS operator doing there? And what was he operating? Did he have radio towers? I mean, there's a lot of different counter UAS technologies, but that inquiry led to looking at the company that Castro worked for, which was doing tests with Anduril, a company I had never heard of before. And I called him up and asked him about that, and he was all shocked. And Palmer Luckey started getting involved in the conversation. I didn't just pull every dot out of a video and say, oh, that's definitely a UAV. Cullen was doing that. That is ridiculous. And frankly, when I look at the totality of what Cullen has done with regard to his videos and his work related to Charlie Kirk's assassination, he has been putting turds in the punch bowl. When I said there was a drone flying around, that was based on a lot of data points and a lot of elements of evidence, primarily what appeared to be some sort of electronic exploit launched. There's another one of those things. Launched at Adam Bartholomew. And what's also interesting is, I was looking at that guy, Didi's got a podcast. I really don't think there's any way that he is unaware of who I am. I've DM'd him or emailed him, or I've tried to contact him. When he first did a video with that guy Ryan or Brian, the accountant, I said, hey, Charles Ortel has a lot of information about this. You would think somebody who's looking into that would be interested in hearing more information about it. Not Didi. Then I just saw he had this, we're going to Mars, we're not going to Mars, whatever this lunatic's name is. He had that guy on there. I forget that guy's real name, but you know, he's a really antagonistic, nasty, I think crazy guy. And he's another one who is just turd in the punch bowl. You know, he couldn't remember Adam Bartholomew's name. So maybe that's organic, he just forgot, or he's not prepared to be on a podcast. But he was, you know, they're trying to muddy the waters rather than providing people with clear information and evidence. You know, when I said, hey, I think these are drones, we did a whole analysis of looking at other flying things. Yeah, Charlie Kirk called the Crooks case highly suspicious and should be investigated. He was right. Yeah, there's a lot of questions there. But my point is, I didn't just say, oh, look, a dot in a video must be a drone. I said, now, wait a minute. We've got this complex scenario where Adam Bartholomew's video cuts out at the precise second that Charlie Kirk is about to be shot, literally 1 second before the shot is fired, and he's looking in a direction where, if he is shooting 4K, who knows what he might have seen. It's the type of thing that a sophisticated, coordinated military operation might do, shut down enemy communications, Then when we looked in the video around there, we saw, as we analyze Adam Bartholomew's video, there's insects, there's birds, then there's these things that don't match the visual, they don't look like birds or insects. They aren't having the same flight characteristics as other birds and insects observed in the same video. John just took some random video from a different location, from a different type of camera that he doesn't know anything about, didn't get the original video, and he just sees a dot and he tells you, boom, 4 UAVs. So to me, either John Cullen is phoning it in and has become totally lazy, or he's deliberately trying to make people think that any dot at all is a UAV, so that other people can then say, oh yeah, conspiracy theorists on the internet think everything is a UAV. And that would effectively discredit the legitimate work that other people, including me, have done to identify actual UAVs. It's something that you might want to do if you didn't want people to really understand what is going on. And what's also interesting is there are some losers hovering around John Cullen right around that time. I'm talking specifically about Diligent Denizen and Baron Coleman. Baron Coleman used to, before anybody knew who he was, I've seen that guy for years. He represented Thomas Schoenberger in a lawsuit against Gabe Hoffman. Thomas Schoenberger used to be very, very active with George's brother. Now, maybe these are all coincidences, that all these people from California and Tennessee and Alabama and different states, they all know each other. Maybe that's a coincidence, or maybe they're all part of a lawfare network and they're all working to control the information sphere in social media, because lawfare is quite clearly some kind of FBI cutout, in my view. Benjamin Wittes, he says he's friends with James Comey. He's emailing James Comey. This is a sculpture of a turd after someone's eaten a lot of corn. What do we got going on here? These people are totally jamming up the highway. This may be a field trip or something. Still 12 megabits. I wonder how much data will be left when I get done with this broadcast. You're gonna have to get a bigger plane. We're gonna need a bigger boat. But James Comey has done live streams with that guy, Ben Wittes. He's received emails about Charles. That's the other thing. The Ben Wittes email sent to James Comey on December 28th, 2016 is talking about Shane Harris, this document that they created, it seems, which mentions Charles. When George set up the first interview with Charles, right when we're sitting there, Shane Harris calls Charles to ask him all about these 33,000 Hillary Clinton emails that a dead guy named Peter Smith, who had committed suicide just about 3 weeks prior, was trying to foist onto Charles. Charles never took them, but again, I think that was their nudge. They were trying to get this evidence planted on Charles, and I think George and all of these people were part of the network that was doing that. It's just too coincidental for my taste to be a coincidence. And the fact that I've been here talking about all this stuff for 9 years, unraveling these things, that makes me a target. And so again, I appreciate all the people who sponsor the show. If you aren't doing that, please do, because they've been trying to push me off the internet and stop this show for the last 9 years. The only reason I'm still here is because of the viewer sponsorship from people like you, who go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. and sponsor the show. Or also follow on X at JG_CSTT and subscribe there. I appreciate that as well. So, where was I? Yeah, they've been suing me forever. It's ridiculous. Right, and Erica worked on EMP tech. I mean, again, there's all kinds of evidence out there that sophisticated military stuff was going on. Why did people stop talking about that U.S. Army ISR jet? Why did they stop talking about, it seemed to have the ability to launch drones. I saw drones. Now, instead of drilling into that and making it more clear, Baron Coleman tries to muddy the waters, has me on his subscriber-only show, which arguably, boosts his broadcast where he gets paid, but gives me the minimal exposure. Yeah, look at that. Speaking of exposure, that auto exposure function is working great. That's a challenging scenario right there. Bright highlights in the sky, dark shadows in the shade. One looking at me, one looking out that way. This guy's looking over here like, what do you want from me? Yeah, and so, Baron Coleman, notice how he's being boosted right now. It's so funny. There's that guy, Julian Dory, and I was having a difficult time in my mind straightening out his show and Danny Jones' show. At first, I was like, wait a minute, is that the same show? Because the format appears the same, the production quality appears the same. It almost looks like it might even be two sets on the same sound stage, or at least production designed by the same people, maybe the same producer, I don't know. And then I noticed today, one or the other said that, I think Julian said that they're very good friends.
And then the second.
So that makes sense. Here, let's see if we can get a good video in 4K of a bee. There he is. Can we see the bee? Nature video. Anyway, not really the right lens for that. So those guys are promoting Baron Coleman. But nobody seems to ask Baron Coleman about what his role was in January 6th, what he knows about Ali Alexander's Stop the Steal. Why, for instance, was there an LLC incorporated in Florida and another incorporated, I believe, in Alabama? What was the legal purpose or business purpose for that? And, he doesn't have to answer these questions, of course. He's not under subpoena, but it's interesting, people want to trust this guy. Same with Diligent Denizen. He claims to be looking for the truth, but yet he operates under a fake name. And when someone revealed that he had been apparently arrested for possession of meth or something like that, people can look that up. What's his name? Alfred Ashley. He gets all upset when you know his real name. Why is that? I thought he's interested in exposing the truth. And Baron Coleman gets upset when I ask him questions about why he's not telling the truth with regard to Blake Bednar's sending money to Blake Bednar's. Now, I'm not saying that these guys are all aligned, because Baron Coleman struck a George Webb YouTube video for allegedly using Baron Coleman footage, but then he didn't strike Blake Bednar's. Why is that? I don't know. And by the way, maybe none of these people are involved in a network in the way that I'm describing. I could be completely wrong about that. I'm just saying this is what it appears to be. But yeah, thank you, that's worrisome. Yeah, the bee in 4K. So it just doesn't make sense to me that a lunatic would be fixated on me for 9 years and not have something better to do with his time. That he would keep suing me. And I mean, it costs thousands and thousands of dollars. He's filing cases, he's filing appeals. Something actually very interesting and good happened today. I don't know if people have seen this. I've got it up on X. yeah, people can see this on X. George's brother had been stalking, allegedly, my father. And my father sought an order of protection against him and won. There's an injunction against George's brother for stalking violence. And here, he appealed it. Here, the appellate court found that he is basically wasting the court's time. He is a vexatious litigant. He is no longer allowed to move in the Fourth Circuit Appellate Court for the Palm Beach, whatever that is, in Florida. He's got to hire an attorney. So finally, after 9 years, and I've been trying to do that in district court, federal court, for 9 years. This is the first time George's brother has been up against a state court, and I was in the hearing with my father where he testified, and a judge, cross-examined my father. My 85-year-old father is being stalked and harassed by these lunatics. You believe that? Even the Hells Angels and the Mafia, even Scarface said, you leave the kids alone, you don't go after the family. Not these guys. They have no morality, no conscience. They are utter scumbags. They deserve to be in jail, but at least now, finally, after 9 years, George's brother has been sanctioned by the court, and he is no longer allowed. No more appeals for him without an attorney. So that's quite interesting. We're going to see where else he might get sanctioned. I'm in court with George's brother in Washington, D.C. There's recently been an order in that case where the Judge Trevor McFadden, the Honorable Trevor McFadden, he's decided that his brother needs to respond to the U.S. Attorney. The Assistant U.S. Attorney is representing Robert F. Kennedy in his role as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. George's lunatic brother has sued Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the NIH and me, and originally Elon Musk and X Corp, saying that we had a big conspiracy where I was granted carte blanche immunity to post, according to him, falsehoods on X. None of that is true. In fact, what I've come to realize is when they say these things, it's essentially what they're doing. And I'm not accusing him of being in a conspiracy with Elon Musk, but I did review these emails that George's brother sent to outside counsel for X, where he took tweets that John Cullen was putting out. This is what really led to the break between John Cullen and myself, which was that Cullen was basically starting a fight with Robert Barnes, threatening him or at least posting tweets that easily could be construed as true threats of violence. And Cullen has all kinds of guns. Nobody knows what he might do. He lies about his true identity and his location. He's obviously got something to hide. And I just told Cullen, don't include me in your insane threats to lawyers who don't like me. You're obviously trying to create a pretext for me to get sued. Take it down. And he didn't respond. That's not very friendly. That's not what somebody who I've helped to build his monetized platform and who wouldn't have a Twitter account unless I got the SIM chip that allowed him to get it, which is exactly what I did. That's not a nice way for that kind of guy to act. But he wouldn't take it down. So I told him, look, this is the last time I'm warning you. If you don't take this down, I'm going to take legal action against you, and that's going to reveal your identity. So then he said I threatened to dox him and that I had violated federal law and he was going to call the FBI, made up a statute. Did people see that? If you haven't seen that last encounter with Cullen, definitely that's a reason to get on to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Did you know that there's a search engine on Subscribestar pinned to the top? You can search by date and for all kinds of videos. You can find the videos. That's a really powerful search engine. You can also get that video on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. You can get it on X as well, but I'm not sure how to search for it on X. You can use Twitter Advanced Search. Anyway, if anybody's a sponsor and hasn't seen that video, send me a DM or an email and I'll help you get to it. But it was only when I told Cullen that if he didn't delete those tweets and apologize, I would sue him. That's when he took them down. But George's brother had already sent this email to outside counsel for Twitter saying that Jason Goodman and his associates, is what he said, are issuing death threats on Twitter, and he told them that if they didn't take me off the platform, he was going to sue them. So that's what motivated me to instruct Cullen to take them down, and then I was able to quickly correspond with the outside counsel for Twitter and prevent any platform action against me. But this is what George's brother is constantly trying to do. Play tricks, play games, get me deplatformed, get me kicked off of social media. Why? Why? Is it because he hates me? I never knew who he was until he started doing this. I didn't seek him out. He sought me out. And I think it's because he was working for or in the interest of the Lawfare Institute. Same thing with Christopher Boozy. Remember that clown? He was doing the same thing. Got me deplatformed when I was asking Benjamin Witte's questions about Peter Smith. Questions Benjamin Witte's didn't want to answer. So, I mean, is this how these guys handle people who they don't want to answer? You get them kicked off of social media, and if there's somebody whose message you want to amplify, whether it's Cullen or Baron Coleman or Danny Jones or Julian Dory, they have their own network where they can amplify people. I don't know. These are questions I'm asking. But they've done a damn good job of mitigating my signal, tamping down this channel. Used to be, I'd walk around a video like this an hour in on the Jason Goodman channel, there'd be 1,000 people watching. Now we have 36, but thank you to the 36 people who are here. I do appreciate you. And by the way, we should talk about Laura Loomer as well. People saw we had the that video on X at the top when I was scrolling down with Andrei Telezhenko. Laura is very careful to say that she wasn't paid by the Ukrainian government and that she would sign an affidavit swearing to that under oath. That does not address the fact that some weapons company, some energy company, some PR agency, some law firm, some media company, someone, so this is what I mean, like Lawfare Institute pays Vindman, Vindman could pay someone else, FBI could see to it that somebody makes a financial contribution, the Pritzker Military Foundation makes a financial contribution to the Lawfare Institute. All that stuff is tax exempt activity. This seems to be how all this works. All right, so now what we're going to do is voluntarily walk into a radio Bermuda Triangle to the spot where it cut out last time, and we're going to test the durability of this current solution. Some buffering, Jeff says. Well, sorry about that. Like I said, make sure you're on high-speed network. And there's different kinds of buffering. There's going to be maybe buffering from YouTube to you, from my server to YouTube. The important thing to not buffer is the signal from this mobile data hotspot to the mobile data network, because then we lose data. Oh wow, yeah, I'm way back there. But it doesn't look like it's disconnected, so that's quite good. And we're still at 11 to 12 megabits down over here. This is Soho. Oh yeah, I was walking right down here. So it was over by the Tesla dealership where the network died last time. I don't know, does anybody have any questions in the comments? Right now I'm looking at the chat on the Jason Goodman channel. I don't know if that's a spot where this guy isn't going to get a ticket, but that's his problem. Got a beer garden. Oh yeah, the Standard Hotel. Yeah, okay, so the other thing that we should talk about is Todd Blanche. You know, people are like, oh, he's dropping the Trump, what was that fund? The weaponization, the anti-weaponization fund. Look, I was looking at the, what is it, Trump versus Treasury, the case where that fund came about as part of a settlement. That thing was not fully baked from the jump. That's another experiment in lawfare, if you want to ask me. I don't think people fully appreciate the extent to which lawfare is rampant and dangerous, and how complex it is in its conception and its use. Robert is asking if I have Starlink. Yes is the answer, but it's not too convenient for walking around with, and it doesn't work well in the middle of New York City because you got to have a clear view of the sky and look at all these buildings. Starlink I use in my car and when I travel, but they just made it really super expensive, and it doesn't work direct to cell. It's a very, what an adorable little dog. It's a very particular problem that I have walking around New York City trying to do now a 4K live stream. Better now, Laura says. Good. Helped when you refreshed. Yeah, that might be buffering on your end. Again, remember, 4K, it's coming at you with 4 times the data rate as well. So, you know, if you're on mobile data, you might want to turn it down to HD, but then you're missing all the fun. It's better in 4K. I don't know, there are people who broadcast in 4K, but, oh, Laura says, what's going on with the Walcott Hotel? Didn't I say there was still activity there? Yes. I went there, not with a video camera, but I was walking back. Look at this metal fish. I was walking back from getting a haircut. Oh man, look, it's forks and spoons. Holy cow, that's really cool. Boy, that's artistry, huh? I was walking back from getting a haircut and I walked past the Walcott Hotel and I went in there and I didn't have a camera, so it was easy to be low key. And I was like, oh, hey, can I rent a room here? And they were like, no, no, no. I was like, why not? I said, it's private, it's private. And I couldn't make out if they were still, see, I need to go in there somehow with 4K. I don't think those Meta glasses operate at 4K, but if you could just get in there and, you know, get eyes on them for a second, you could review the video later. That's the thing about super high res, is that even if you just capture one frame of something, you could go back and review it later and might have tons of data. You could read the shopping bag that woman had, I'm sure. So, you know, we're capturing and disseminating an incredible amount of data. I said this the other day, just this little video inset right here, that's the total. That's 1280-720. That is the total resolution of the full video from January 6th. So all this other stuff outside the frame, it's like 2 shows in one. Now here's an electric Hummer. This is one of the craziest, most ridiculous vehicles ever. And look, we have this Ferrari Pure Sangue This is the 12-cylinder Ferrari. Maybe these guys are driving it. This is the 12-cylinder Ferrari SUV. Pretty wild. If you've got, 300,000, pick up one of those. I recommend. So we're still doing 12 megabits over here. That's unbelievable. Walking right by this Apple store is another famously dangerous sort of dead zone for radio. I don't know if I want to tempt my fate. Let's try it. Let's see.